Good morning. I'm going to go ahead and do a little reading of the Cyclops. Today it will be section 1. I'll start on line 109 and read to 284. And as I read it, I'm going to be asking questions of myself. This is a video on how to annotate as you're reading. Some of you have never read an epic poem or anything like that, and you might be having some trouble with how to read it. I suggested before that reading out loud is, I think, the best way to read something like this. If you are confident and you don't want to listen to this, that's great. But if you want to maybe pay attention to some of the things that I'm thinking about as I read this, you might be a little more prepared for the comprehension questions about the Cyclops at the end of the week. You will have a quiz on your reading. Excuse me, on Friday. I'm not going to restart this. I'm just going to keep going. It just makes me more human, right? All right, so I'm going to read this. I'm not sure you really need to see me, but let's see if I move myself out of the way. I'll be right. All right. As we read, you might also want to make note of some of the words that stand out to you. In your writer's notebook, you are taking note of some of the perfect words that we're talking about, those really strong, vibrant adjectives and verbs, and you also might include some of the nouns that are there. All right, so we're going to get started. The Cyclops. In the next land we found were Cyclopes, giants, louts, without a law to bless them. What does that mean? Without a law to bless them. In ignorance, leaving the fruitage of the earth in mystery to the immortal gods. They neither plow nor sow by hand nor till the ground, though grain, wild wheat, and barley grows untended, and wine grapes in clusters ripen in heaven's rains. Cyclopes have no muster and no meeting, no consultation or old tribal ways, but each one dwells in his own mountain cave, dealing out rough justice to wife and child, indifferent to what the others do. This might be some foreshadowing of what might be coming for the Cyclops. But think about how these Cyclopes are characterized. Are they nice guys? Contrast this with the strong sense of community that Odysseus shares with his men. As we rode on and nearer to the mainland, at one end of the bay, we saw a cavern yawning above the water, screened with laurel, and many rams and goats about the place inside a sheepfold, made from slabs of stone, earth fast, between tall trunks of pine and rugged towering oak trees. It's beautiful imagery, strong word, yawning above the water. So what kind of place is this? Can you visualize it? A prodigious man, you see that prodigious means enormous, slept in this cave alone and took his flocks to graze a field, remote from all companions. Again, this might play a part. Knowing none but savage ways, a brute so huge, he seemed no man at all of those who eat good wheaten bread, but he seemed rather a shaggy mountain reared in solitude. Beautiful metaphor there. We beached there, and I told the crew to stand by and keep watch over the ship. I wonder if they're going to do that. As for myself, I took my 12 best fighters and went ahead. I had a goatskin full of that sweet liquor that Euanthes' son, Maron, had given me. He kept Apollo's holy grove at Ismarus. For kindness we showed him there, and showed his wife and child. He gave me 7 shining golden talents, perfectly formed, a solid silver wine bowl, and then this liquor, 12 two-handled jars of brandy, pure and fiery. Could be some foreshadowing. How is this going to play a part later? And we see more historical context with reference to the gods, because now we have Apollo, who's the god of music and poetry and prophecy and medicine. Not a slave in Maron's household knew this drink. Only he, his wife, and the storeroom mistress knew. And they would put 1 cupful ruby-colored honey, smooth, in 20 more of water, so it's very potent. But still the sweet scent hovered like a fume over the wine bowl. No man turned away when cups of this came around. A wineskin full I brought along, and victuals in a bag, for in my bones I knew some towering brute would be upon us soon. Again, more foreshadowing. All outward power, a wild man, ignorant of civility. I wonder about outward power versus inner power. Can the inner power destroy the outer power? We climbed then briskly to the cave. But Cyclops had gone afield to pasture his fat sheep, so we looked around at everything inside. A drying rack that sagged with cheeses, pens crowded with lambs and kids, each in its class, firstlings apart from middlings, and the dewdrops, or newborn lambkins, penned apart from both. And vessels full of whey were brimming there, bowls of earthenware and pails for milking. My men came pressing round me, pleading. Why not take these cheeses, get them stowed, come back, throw open all the pens, and make a run for it? We'll drive the kids and lambs aboard. We say, put out again on good salt water. Is this good advice? Is he going to follow this advice? Or is it his curiosity that's going to get to him? Ah, how sound that was! Yet I refused. I wished to see the caveman, what he had to offer. No pretty sight it turned out for my friends. Again, more foreshadowing. So what kind of a leader keeps his men in a dangerous situation? And then I wonder, have you ever known that you shouldn't do something or go somewhere? You just had that sense that it was dangerous, but you did it anyway. And then what were those consequences for you? We'll see if he regrets this decision. We lit a fire, burnt an offering, always thinking about the gods, and took some cheese to eat. And then we sat in silence around the embers waiting. When he came, he had a load of dry boughs on his shoulder to stoke his fire at supper time. He dumped it with a great crash into that hollow cave, and we all scattered fast to the far wall. Then over the broad cavern floor, he ushered the ewes he meant to milk. He left his rams and he-goats in the yard outside, and swung high overhead a slab of solid rock to close the cave. You can see how strong he is with that outer strength. 24 four-wheeled wagons with heaving wagon teams could not have stirred the tonnage of that rock from where he wedged it over the doorsill. So here's not only some very good imagery, but it's a cultural reference. So I'm not that familiar with four-wheeled wagons with teams of whatever, horses, oxen, whatever. But in that time period, they are. Next, he took his seat and milked his bleeding ewes. A practiced job he made of it, giving each ewe her suckling. Do you find it odd that he takes such tender care of his sheep when he doesn't care at all about these men? Another thing to ponder of characterization of the Cyclops. He thickened his milk then into curds and whey, sieved out the curds to drip in withy baskets, and poured the whey to stand in bowls cooling until he drank it for his supper. When all these chores were done, he poked the fire, heaping on brushwood. In the glare, he saw us. Strangers, he said, who are you and where from? What brings you here by seaways of fair traffic? Or are you wandering rogues who cast your lives like dice and ravage other folks by sea? We felt a pressure on our hearts in dread of that deep rumble and that mighty man. More foreshadowing. But all the same, I spoke up in reply, we are from Troy, Achaeans blown off course by shifting gales on the great South Sea. Is that true? Homeward bound, but taking routes and ways uncommon, so the will of Zeus would have it. So let's blame Zeus for their being there. We served under Agamemnon, son of Atreus. The whole world knows what city he laid waste, what armies he destroyed. He's a powerful man, so he's referencing this powerful king. It was our luck to come here. It's our luck to come here. Here we stand beholden for your help or any gifts you give, as custom is to honor strangers. Remember that in that day, hospitality was a heroic character. And he's so bold to ask for gifts. We would entreat you, great sir, have a care for the gods' courtesy. Zeus will avenge the unoffending guest. Zeus will avenge them. He answered this from his brute chest, unmoved. You are a ninny, or else you come from the other end of nowhere, telling me, mind the gods. We Cyclopes care not a whistle for your thundering Zeus, or all the gods in bliss. We have more force by far. He's mocking the gods, mocking Zeus. He has no fear. I wonder if that's a good idea. I would not let you go for fear of Zeus, you or your friends, unless I had a whim to. Tell me, where was it now you left your ship? Around the point or down the shore, I wonder? Why does he want to know that? He thought he'd find out, but I saw through this. Another example of Odysseus's guile, his cunning, and answered with a ready lie. Honesty may not be a trait that they admire. My ship, Poseidon Lord, who sets the earth a-tremble, broke it up on the rocks at your land's end. A wind from seaward served him, drove us there. We are survivors, these good men and I. Is this to protect the men that are left behind on this ship, I wonder? How do you feel about Odysseus as a leader right now? Neither reply nor pity came from him, but in one stride he clutched at my companions and caught two in his hands like squirming puppies to beat their brains out, spattering the floor. Who beats out the brains of puppies? Then he dismembered them and made his meal, gaping and crunching like a mountain lion. Contrast those similes, like a squirming puppy and like a mountain lion. They're helpless. Everything, innards, flesh, and marrow bones. We cried aloud, lifting our hands to Zeus, powerless, looking on at this appalled. But Cyclops went on filling up his belly with man flesh and great gulps of whey, then lay down like a mast among his sheep. We all know what a mast is. My heart beat high now at the chance of action, and drawing the sharp sword from my hip, I went along his flank to stab him where the midriff holds the liver. I had touched the spot when sudden fear stayed me. If I killed him, we perished there as well, for we could never move his ponderous doorway slab aside. So we were left to groan and wait for morning. When the young dawn with fingertips of rose lit up the world, I love this, it's used often. It's so hopeful, isn't it? Maybe this is foreshadowing of something good happening here. And it's a motif that we see over and over again. The Cyclops built a fire and milked his handsome ewes, all in due order, putting the sucklings to the mothers. Then his chores being all dispatched, he caught another brace of men to make us breakfast, and whisked away his great door slab to let his sheep go through. But he behind reset the stone as one would cap a quiver. Another reference to something that we might not be familiar with, a quiver of arrows. There was a din of whistling as the Cyclops rounded his flock to higher ground, and then stillness. And now I pondered how to hurt him worst, if but Athena, that goddess of wisdom, granted what I prayed for. Here are the means I thought would serve my turn. A club or staff lay there along the fold, an olive tree felled green and left to season for Cyclops's hand. And it was like a mast, another reference to the ships that they are familiar with. A lugger of 20 oars, broad in the beam, a deep seagoing craft might carry. So long, so big around it seemed. Now I chopped out a 6-foot section of this pole and set it down before my men, who scraped it. And when they had it smooth, I hewed again to make a stake with pointed end. I held this in the fire's heart and turned it, toughening it. then hid it well back in the cavern under one of the dung piles in profusion there. I don't know what dung piles are. Sheep poop. Now came the time to toss for it. Who ventured along with me? Whose hand could bear to thrust and grind that spike in Cyclops' eye when mild sleep had mastered him? As luck would have it, the men I would have chosen with the toss won the toss. 4 strong men, and I made 5 as captain. Okay, I'm going to stop here at the end of part 1, and I will have another video of part 2. If this is helpful, continue to watch these. All right, I will see you again soon. Bye.